so it's out now.
Okay.
And so people can hear us. And for, let's see, so now I have to try to find the feed.
And then we edit the comment? Or
we can edit the
post?
Yeah, we can edit the post. But it's not up yet. Okay, where's it? We can look for it here too. There we go. Okay, so then we can edit it, and then what do you want me to add?
I just, yeah.
So I should tag you, right? Isha. And maybe, are we not friends?
Yeah, that's me. And
That's
then,
you. And then New Harvest.
yeah. Could we say that New Harvest is a charity or a nonprofit?
We're online, but we
Okay.
we can talk about whatever you want.
No,
So
I don't mind if people hear that either.
yeah. So I think let's save that, and then this should be live here too. And everybody who's been watching these knows the drill, where I have to get this over to Twitter, and also for people who've been complaining about the audio, I realize that this is kind of echoey. I have ordered lavalier mics; they're coming, so that will get better. And then I'll tweet it out. Tweeted, and then the last thing is to get the comments going. 10 people watching right now.
Cool. A lot of them are in the New Harvest office, I think.
Okay. All right, so I think we're possibly ready to go.
This is so fun.
Okay, so we'll turn this off. Turn the video off here. Okay, we're going to go live now.
Cool.
So let's see.
Do you want to label that image?
This one?
This one. Or this one?
Yeah.
I don't know if that is that one.
Okay. Alrighty. Aisha, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Joey?
So we just met.
Yes.
But although I know all about you because when I was going through the finalists for the Shuttleworth Fellowship,
Yes.
I read all about you and was Googling you and stuff like that.
That's
Although
awesome.
you didn't know that I was involved in...
No, I had no idea. I was so excited about Shuttleworth, but didn't really grasp what was going on behind the scenes, so that was cool. I only saw when I saw your tweet, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, can we start? Because this is fun because this is our first meeting, so you guys all get to see it. But tell me a little bit about what you do in New Harvest.
Sure. So New Harvest is a research institute. We're completely funded by donors,
Mm-hmm.
and our whole goal is to make foods from cell cultures instead of from animals. And the reason for that is that there's an upper limit on what we can do with livestock farming.
And that's your website?
Yes, that is. So these are actually some of our projects, producing milk using a yeast fermentation, so kind of like brewing beer, but milk comes out instead. Similar with producing egg proteins, and then on the side there we have meat produced in cell culture. So that's a little bit different technology than using like yeast, and it's much more, I guess, further into the future, but the idea that you collect muscle cells and then grow them.
So can I ask some questions while you're talking?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I can't remember his name. He's this crazy artist who I like, but
Oran.
Oran,
Yes.
right. So one of the things that Oran, it's funny, you just knew from Crazy Artist was enough. Oran, when he showed me this stuff, because he's also an artist, he shows how ridiculously stupid it was because it took like cows and cows
Yes.
of material to make this little tiny steak. So,
Yes.
so he's almost sort of ironic about it. And so
Yes.
I guess my question to you is, does it work at scale? I mean, or is it just, because that was one of the things that I was sort of trying to noodle on when I was looking at it.
Yes. So this cell cultured hamburger, it was more proof that this is like physically possible, but not much novel science came out of it. Essentially what we were doing was a laboratory experiment that anyone could do, which is multiple multiply muscle cells in culture, and then they did it like thousands and thousands of times. So when you looked at it,
But what's the food for the culture?
It's also from cows. It's a fetal bovine
so
serum.
it's still
that burger was worse than a regular burger by many, many times over, and involved many more animals. But what it showed was that it was possible, and so what New Harvest's goal is instead of working towards creating these prototypes.
Somebody says Twitter link doesn't work. Hold on. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Apologies. Why isn't it work?
The live tech support is also very interesting.
I think it works for me. I think you have to log in to Facebook, and I apologize if you don't have Facebook. I will be putting this onto YouTube, and next time when I have my new setup, I'll talk about tech later.
Okay.
So right now the demo the test that you did took more calories of cow than the calories you produced, right?
That actually wasn't work that we funded. That was funded by Sergey Brin.
Okay.
So the work that we funded is different because it's all academic work that is going to be published. The goal is to do these kind of incremental steps that get us towards producing cells in mass culture.
Okay.
So one of the most exciting projects that we're doing right now is creating the very first turkey cell line. So all this time we had thought that growing cows and pigs would be, beef and pork would be easier because they're so much like humans and we know so much about human cells. But it turns out that avian cells are actually really easy to grow. And we found a researcher in North Carolina who had been keeping turkey cells since 1993 because he's been wanting to do this project for so long, but he just couldn't get support from the existing funding channels.
Wow.
So we found him, we found an amazing student named Marie who's working with him, and they are creating the first turkey cell line so that anyone who wants to do culture meat research can just order these cells like you would order like stem cells and stuff. Because right now you can't order meat cells, which is weird considering how common it is.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to show you a video of the status of those turkey cells.
Okay, so that is this cell peeling thing.
Yes.
Oh no, that's.
Oh no, that's Dan. Maybe it's a little. Oh no, we have so many photos now. Maybe it's scroll up a little bit.
Maybe they got mislabeled. Hold on, I'll get it. I have it over here. Here it is.
Okay, so these are turkey cells that are growing on a plate, and they've matured enough that now they are beginning to contract like our own muscles do. And they're contracting so much that they're actually peeling themselves off the plate, almost like rolling up into a turkey nugget, essentially.
Wow.
So for us, this is so
flat
exciting.
And now it's getting.
Yeah, it's like rolling up like this. And for us, it is so incredibly exciting because this research we funded, it was maybe $19,000 in, which is way, way cheaper than that cell cultured hamburger. And we're actually creating like novel science in the process.
But I'm going to keep going at this till I feel I get it. So, but I'll talk about the food again. So what are you feeding this thing?
Oh, this is still not animal free.
Okay.
So this is being fed chicken serum.
Okay, well what's the goal on the food side?
So the goal is to create foods that have a way, way smaller environmental impact than foods from animals today.
Okay.
And it's not just about the environmental impact. When you have a ton of livestock in one place, you also have, public health issues like viruses and flus and things like that generating antibiotic resistance. And it's also just the inhumane treatment of animals. Like the more efficient that we get with our livestock production, the less good it is for animals. So it's the idea that we can produce meat, milk, and eggs and various other products directly instead of through kind of this animal bioreactor. We have like an actual bioreactor.
Actually, I'm going to turn off the air conditioning because it'll sound better.
Sure.
So you're not actually trying to be. Well, no, but it's this is actually at the meal we often talk about the end of the artificial, right?
Yes.
Because now that you have synthetic stuff, you can't really tell whether it's synthetic or whether it's natural, right? And so, in a way, you're saying that while you are using muscle, if it's produced in a way that's humane, where it's ecologically safe, and doesn't hurt the ecosystem, that it's not vegan, but it's not
Right.
animal flesh eating.
Well,
That's animal flesh, but it's not animal, right?
Right.
How do you describe it? You must have thought about that.
Well, we call it cell cultured meat because we think the most important part of it is that it's produced from cell culture.
Yeah.
I mean, cells want to multiply. That's, natural. But instead of growing a whole organism, we're just focusing on the thing that we need in the end.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think that you will always need some sort of because it feels like if you have to kill a bunch of animals to make synthetic meat, that's not it, right? So what do you think a possible energy source is? Can it be plant-based, do you think, the energy
I think
source?
it can be plant-based.
Okay.
I think the main reason why we rely so heavily on these fetal serums in tissue culture is because we've never had to find something else.
Yeah.
It's expensive, it's like a byproduct, it's available, and it's like a magic ingredient. Like,
and
it has everything, and
yeah.
it just works.
And in a way, I mean, I'm an internet guy, so you're currently working on a particular layer.
Yes.
And once you figure out that layer works, you can go to the next layer, which is how do we feed these things, right?
Exactly.
And you're confident that you can do that.
Yeah, so we think that the cells are like the most basal layer, and then after we figure out the cells, we can figure out how to feed the cells in a better way.
By the way, you can see all the likes flying across the screen.
Oh, it's so cool.
All right, so that was one of my questions. And then the other question I had, which I made up an answer while I was looking at your thing, but I think it's correct. I want to run it by you, or we'll have to take away your fellowship. So because to me, I feel like the taste of meat obviously has a bunch of connections to existing recipes, existing cultures, and stuff like that. But to me, thinking about what could you produce in terms of taste that we don't have, right? And then I was wondering why you picked these sort of fundamental kind of American staples, or not American, but staple meats. Although turkey's kind of interesting. Right. But I guess maybe because we know a lot about it. But are you trying to then go from there to start creating synthetic, like soylent that actually tastes interesting, and working with chefs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I often think about the first time that we used biotechnology, and it was when we started fermenting foods.
Yeah.
And I say this so many times that when we could never have looked at milk and wanted it to be solid and stinky with like bubbles in it. We could have never imagined cheese.
Yeah.
But we could get there because we came up with this biotech process to get there with like living cultures. So our idea is if we start developing these tools and methodologies to produce foods in a different way, we actually open up like a whole new world of foods that we had never ever experienced before.
Right.
So right now we have this awesome proposal where a researcher wants to be using vegetables as a scaffold for meat cells to grow on.
Okay.
So muscle cells need to attach onto something
Yeah.
for them to contract.
Okay.
And so you can actually like decellularize or remove a lot of the material for vegetables and then fill it with meat cells instead to fill it
interesting.
in. And then you kind of have like a meat mushroom, for example. So
it's kind of like stuffed.
Yeah. Like a crab, like crab cells in the mushroom.
So it's interesting. So you're talking to chefs. I mean, we have Ariel from Noma is in our lab. Well, you're working with Caleb, I guess. You're bumping into. So you know, like some.
And I know Ariel, and I know David also at Noma.
Okay. Awesome.
So, and I met Sam recently.
Because that was the other thing, was like a lot of people said, "Oh, it's not gonna taste good," but the point is to make it taste good, right?
It's funny because people think like this is like the removal of culture from food, whereas I would argue that it's the introduction of a new one. And we haven't really had an introduction of a new one for a long time.
Yeah.
And also in the past, the introduction of new food cultures have been more like moving towards chemical stuff, and like petrochemical synthesized flavors and fragrances, and now we have this ability to move into biological ones, which in a way is more natural, because at least it starts from the sun.
But mashing it together with plants, I was just thinking about that even more. That's pretty neat, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because again, I think you could even automate the process so that you end up with like a turkey pepper at the end of the day.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to try that?
And are you working with microbiome stuff as well? You talked about fermentation. I mean, I think that, but I guess that's still further down, right?
Not really. Not yet.
Yeah. The main thing, though, that you're doing, which is, I think, amazing, but I want to also check to make sure I understand it properly, was that you're trying to do this as a community in an open effort, not a startup. trying to
Yes.
make $1 billion with some patent, right?
Yes, correct. So we believe that this research is just so early that we have an opportunity to essentially design a food system based around food science that's never been done before.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to go back and redesign a food system, I would make it all open because, everyone needs food and we have a limited planet.
Yeah.
It should be something that everyone has access to. So our goals, especially at this stage, which is like the very, very fundamentals, cells, I think they should be open because they're like code. Like they're tools.
Yeah.
If everyone has access to those cells, that means everyone can develop their own cultures, and maybe we get a huge diversity in terms of what meat can be compared to like 4 companies controlling 90% of the meat.
Yeah,
production.
and also, I feel like when you have a new technology, I think Monsanto didn't do us a favor by making the first GMOs about oppressing poor people, right? If the first GMO had been but making things that are hard to copy and proprietary, right? Instead of saying open sourcing golden rice. If that had been the first application, people have a very different view of GMOs. But I think if you're patenting and controlling and making seeds that can't produce seeds, then you're people are obviously not going to be super happy about it, right?
That's the thing. Like GMO is a tool, and like Roundup Ready corn is an application. Golden rice is an application, and so GMO as a tool got a bad rap just for this one application.
Yeah.
And I think we should be thinking of cell cultured foods, especially these cell cultures, as a tool, not an application, because one turkey cell like this one can lead to like 100 iterations of what turkey can be in the future that I can't even come up with. That you actually want a community to come up with, because
and that's the open source idea.
Right?
Is that other people will hack your stuff and make it better. Most of the time.
Well, and for food, wouldn't you want it to be about diversity? I think that's the most resilient and like exciting way to go forward.
So how is this structured? So New Harvest is a nonprofit.
Yes. So we're a 501c3. We're funded by 420 or so donors. We don't have any single benefactor, so that we're not beholden to any one person or one group, which is really cool. And we kind of have. Right now, we give seed grants to researchers around the world who are interested in doing things that we think are particularly like catalytic. So we think this cell line, for example, is catalytic because it obviously grows into so much.
So you collect funds and then you grant them out again.
Yes, but we're not just like a re-granting organization, because we ensure that all the grants we give, all of those researchers have to work together, and also they have to use each other's tools. Okay. So once we have the turkey cell done, we can work with the scaffold people who can now use that cell to put it onto the vegetables or to develop media for it that are plant-based.
Okay.
But so there's kind of like a stepwise strategy. There's things you can do simultaneously, but there is like a master plan at some level. And then in addition to this, we are building our very own lab to ensure that everything is like actually open source. So we could bring up one of the photos of the lab.
So which one do you want?
Lab with Guy.
Lab with Guy. There we go.
That guy's name is Dan. So this is a lab that we're building with.
Is this the Dan?
Yes, it's that Dan.
Hey Dan.
Hi Dan. He's in the Netherlands right now. So this is a lab that we're building with Shuttleworth and also with a lot of our donors. It's actually in a cave under Paris. And the whole point of it is to be developing more and more cell lines. What we pitched as a cell menu, and making sure that those are completely open source. And the reason why we're doing our own lab for that is because with universities it's not always easy to keep everything completely open. And so we think that this will be an inexpensive way to have a really creative environment for open source research.
Interesting. And how many people do you have in your, like, how, is this a big organization? Or?
Yeah, it's very hard to understand. So as a team, we're only 3 full-time staff. In terms of our researchers, we're funding 3 projects right now with multiple people working on each of them. And then we have a pipeline of a lot of proposals that we want to have funded.
I see.
So our only limiting factor is money, and that's because we've been so adamant about being just philanthropy funded instead of.
And you're not thinking about like building a little startup on the side or like.
Well, actually, I mean, this all started because I built startups on the side. So when I first started with New Harvest in January of 2013, we had like $0, and I was wondering how someone like me, who is like not independently wealthy, could start my own research institute.
Yeah.
So we had like $30,000 in the first year, and that was just convening like a community of people who really cared about this work. And then the next year, I was like, okay, we got to start doing some science. So we created 2 companies. One of them is called Perfect Day Now. They were previously called Moofree, and they are the ones making milk and cell culture.
Okay.
And so they are VC funded. When it came time for their first investment, I actually gave up my founding equity and gave it to New Harvest instead. So in the event that Perfect Day makes us a lot of money, then New Harvest can use that to fund early stage research. So it's kind of like a future endowment. Yeah. And then the same thing happened a little bit later, where we started this team making egg whites and cell culture, and New Harvest also owns equity in that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was just a way to get projects going when we had no money, but after that people started to understand, okay, I get what New Harvest does, and it's not science fiction, like this is, there is a pathway there that's very clear.
Yep.
And so we started giving grants and supporting researchers after that. We had our very first conference, which was cool because this group of people had never been in one room before, like 300 something people. We also had a workshop where we brought in companies like major food companies to expose them to what we were up to, because there's so much conversation about like regulatory questions, what do big companies think, that it's important to just bring everyone in the mix even when it's so early.
And so then who are your competitors? I mean, there must be for-profit companies thinking, oh, we're going to own this. Or are they your friends?
I mean, we're all friends. It's too small,
it's a small community, yeah.
It's too small to have competitors at this stage.
What's this bioreactor?
Oh yeah, so that's Jess and Marie. I don't know if it's flipped on your side. So Jess is the one on top of the Joi Ito logo, and then Marie's on the other side. Yeah. And Marie is the researcher working on the turkey cells, and Jess is actually.
Hey, hi Marie.
Yeah, Marie's. Oh no, that's a different Marie.
Okay.
But Jess is working on all kinds of like DIY built bioreactors in Ohio, and Jess is in North Carolina, and I'm excited about both of those places because they're like agriculture places. And I think it's important to have agriculture happening in agriculture places in addition to on the coasts. But this is a bioreactor where the cells will be growing next. So after the peeling part, now they're going into this big bioreactor to show that we can actually grow a lot of them.
And again, this is where you sort of start to need scaffolding, right? Because or not?
So no. So what we believe is that if you actually want to grow a lot of cells and do this efficiently, you have to make your cells able to grow in suspension.
Okay.
And then eventually you can put it on.
How do you do texture and stuff like that? Is that just that's the secret sauce?
So no, that's the next thing. Is that after we know that we can grow a bunch of cells, we figure out what we can put them onto.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you've got the turkey thing, you've got this bioreactor. What's the next thing you need to invent after this? Or I guess they're all running in parallel right now.
The serum-free media is the thing that is a big hole.
Yeah.
Because right now there are actually lots of proprietary ones, but they're proprietary, which means you actually have no idea where they came from.
I see.
And you also don't know how those ingredients were made. And also they may not be animal-free. So there's just so many empty holes.
So who, and that's interesting. I would be curious about how you think about who might have the answer to that, because it's possibly not obvious, right?
Well, we think everybody has an answer. It's a project that we're thinking of is how we can do the serum-free medium research in a way that's like very distributed. Because there may be many, in the way that there's many things you can feed to an animal, there's probably a huge variety of things you can feed to cells. Right. And probably each of those comes with their own flavor and benefits and all that kind of stuff.
And what are the elemental components of that what are the basic sort of ingredients that you need to feed a cell?
Well, like amino acids, fats.
So in a weird way though, most of those things are things that are generated by animals, right? I mean, the cost of actually putting those things together completely synthetically is pretty hard, right? Or do plants make most of those things as well? And it's hard though.
Plants make most of those things.
I guess the original source is a plant. So basically what you're trying to do is take what animals do to plants to create those and figure out a process to do that, right?
Yes. We think like algae, for example, could be a very promising source because you can produce a lot of fats and carbohydrate and proteins from it.
Okay.
the reason why serum is so magical is because it's what you feed a growing fetus, so it has like every single thing.
Right,
and an important part of that are these like growth factors and signals that tell the cells to mature.
I see.
So it's actually not just like the food stuff, but it's the signals too.
Yeah, okay, because the environment has to feel to the cell like it's the environment that it should grow in.
Right.
So, okay, and I guess the question would be also, if you think about synthetic biology and genetics, can you fiddle that so that it feels at home in different contexts?
Fiddle the muscle cells?
The genetic code. I don't know how much we know about what makes the gene or the cell understand its microenvironment, or do we not know anything about that yet?
I think, we've thought about ways that we could alter the cell so that it makes its own signals for itself.
Yeah, I see.
We know stuff, but we don't know everything.
Yeah. Well,
and also, especially when it comes to these turkey cells, like it's kind of a new frontier because so much research has been done with so few organisms.
Mm-hmm. So Marie's saying...
Oh yeah, that is the Marie.
So she's saying there's a serum-free medium for turkey cell proliferation just to find out recombinant or plant-based alternatives to make it completely animal-free.
Okay, so what she's saying is there's one that isn't serum, which is like from the heart of a fetus, but it still has animal products in it.
I see. But it's still better.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But this is also, to me, I love this in a media lab kind of way, because you have to pull in so many people from so many disciplines, and you never know where you might find the person who is thinking about this, and this is a perfect thing for opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Well, that's really cool. I don't know if you have anything you want to talk about. Do you want to...
Well, were there other photos that we put up there?
There was, I think that was mainly it. I mean, while you were talking, I put up the equipment without Dan.
Well, I guess I would just add, like, it's not easy to do this research, such expensive stuff on a nonprofit budget. So if anyone out there is really interested in supporting this research, there isn't really a single person or country or anyone taking ownership of it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it also presents an opportunity. Like, if you want to get involved, you can be a pioneer now. Like, Marie got in touch with me several months ago, and I would consider her like a pioneer in cultured meat research now, because she's doing stuff that no one has ever done before.
And how do people? I mean, where you're based here in New York?
Yes.
And so people should just look up your address and like bang on your door. How should people reach out to you?
Just email me. Isha, ISHA at new-harvest.org.
Okay, we'll put and I linked to you on Facebook so they can go send you a message.
Yeah, we're really, really accessible.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Isha.
Thanks so much, Joey. This is really cool seeing how this works on the other side.
I know.